Hi everyone, my name is Alina. I'm founder of Verb Etc. And today my guest is Natasha, who has amazing Instagram account about tech and about machine learning, blonde_AI. Search it on Instagram, it's really cool. And she's also a researcher in DeepMind. So today I'm really eager to know more about your personal career path, like how did you get here, and maybe some advice that you could give. So in a couple of words, tell us about yourself and about your background, experience, and so on.
Okay, so I was born in Belarus, and at the age of 16 I moved to the United States, and I lived there since moving to London. I finished high school there, went to university, studied math and physics, which I loved, and then I did a PhD in medical physics, so doing research related to medical technology basically, and after finishing my PhD I got a job at DeepMind and moved to London.
Okay, so you told that you love math and physics, so how did you discover this love for math and physics?
Yeah, good question. I think it's kind of maybe from my grandpa. He is since I was a little girl, he would ask me these little fun questions where you had to think mathematically about to answer them, and some physics questions, and I loved those. I loved them. It was like a play for me, and that's probably when I realized that math is something that I'm good at, and what
we have a guest speaker.
Exactly. So and yeah, when I moved to the States, I think I really realized that doing research in those fields, in physics for example, is doable, and you can build your own career on it. And live good life with it, right? So I decided to study them in the university.
So was there any, I would say, particular moment when you decided I'm gonna go and study physics, for example, math and physics, or it was gradually building because of your, I don't know, family or friends?
I think gradually building, yeah. That's something that I enjoyed doing in school always. That's something that I was good at, and I decided to do it. Yeah.
Nice. And what about PhD? Because not everyone goes for PhD. So what is your story?
What's my story? So I guess when I was in the university, I studied in University of Wisconsin-Madison, and it's a huge research school. And after the first year there, I was looking for a research lab that I could join, working part-time. And I found this field called medical physics, and I didn't know of its existence. But when I was looking for a lab, I thought that I wanted to use my computational skills and apply it to something more concrete and day-to-day life, and medicine sounded like a good example of that, right? And that's what literally I googled: UW-Madison, physics, medicine, and medical physics came up, and that's how I found out about this field. And I found a lab that I really liked, and I wrote to the professor and I asked him to join him and to start working with him. And this lab, they still work on developing this technology for measuring magnetic signal from fetus's heart, because fetus is covered in placenta, which does not transmit electrical signal, so it's hard to measure anything electrical, right? Which we usually measure in humans, in adults I should say. But so I really enjoyed that, and I did some signal processing there, so I used my math and physics skills, but at the same time we had pregnant women come into the lab and we would do the measurements, and I would interact with them, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. And after that, I decided that, this is an amazing field and I want to continue working in it. And I applied to a PhD in medical physics.
Nice. So you already during your, I would say, undergrad studies, right? You were already exposed to
research.
Okay. And that's how you selected the field. But is there any maybe other, I don't know, sometimes, like, do you have anybody with medical background in your family, or like any personal reasons why did you decide to go for medicine, or it just like was like logical path for you to?
No, I think it was a personal story. My mom had actually at that time, and I completely forgot to mention that something happened to my mom. She got into hospital, and it was a serious reason, and that kind of shook me.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I thought about going into medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah,
applying computational skills in medicine.
That's really interesting and inspiring to some extent. Like I see that for many people with like ambitious, you know, like career paths, sometimes it's driven by some personal reasons. Mm-hmm. And for for PhD, tell us about PhD. How was it, and how long did it take for you? Was it difficult?
It was an incredible experience, but I think it was a roller coaster. I would say it was a sometimes easy time, but a lot of times it was difficult, and maybe not difficult from academic standpoint, mm-hmm. but from emotional standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I realized when I got into PhD. You know, I'm done with those hardcore physics classes. That I'm not gonna. The classes that I took during PhD for the first year, they were much easier than what I've done in my undergrad in university. But first of all, you have to be super self-motivated to continue mm-hmm. working on this project for as long as who knows how long it takes. Yeah. There is no answer, right? You're the person looking for that answer. And second of all, it was difficult to see friends who studied the same thing in university and went into big tech companies and making a lot of money, which is not what you're doing during your PhD. But I enjoyed it in any case. It was incredible time meeting incredible people, and I think the aspect of self-development, you mm-hmm. kind of, a lot of things are in your own hands. That's inspiring. It took me 4 years to do my mm-hmm. PhD, but I pushed it. I would say I pushed it in the States. 4 to 6, I would say, is normal.
Yeah. But like 4 is like quite short. Like
it's on the shorter side, yeah. I would say. Yeah.
Good job.
I think I was lucky. You know, it also depends on what lab you join, what mm-hmm. kind of professor is your mentor, and I think I was lucky with that.
Cool. So like speaking of your PhD, like how did the transition to machine learning happen? Was it like gradual transition, or like you had some kind of aha moment, like I need to study that, or mm-hmm. how did it happen?
Yeah, when I was starting my PhD, I wanted to work on developing novel MRI sequences, so working with the physics of MRIs. But the first year of PhD, we had to do rotations in mm-hmm. at least 2 labs, and I did rotations in 3 labs. And one of them was working with a lab that did image analysis, so mm-hmm. computer-aided diagnosis. And at that moment, they were using like old school computer-aided diagnosis methods, like handcrafted features, some machine learning, but very basic machine learning. Mm-hmm. But I realized that I really liked what they were doing, and I really liked the problem that they were mm-hmm. working with. So from the images, how do we diagnose something from the mm-hmm. images? And so I decided to join that lab, and when I was doing the work, I realized that what I need, of course, you know, I started reading about the techniques people use, about deep learning. It was booming, like mm-hmm, the boom mm-hmm. just happened, and I realized that this was what can solve my problem, right? The problem that I was interested in, breast cancer diagnosis from MRIs, mm-hmm. That deep learning can help me. So I had to learn it myself. So I went and, you know, just self-studied it.
Nice. So like I can imagine you decided to self-study, but where did you start? Like, or did you consult anyone, or like you just started reading books? How did it happen?
I was lucky to be working with one one person in the lab. He was just working with us. I think he was an undergrad at the university, and he was doing some machine learning classes on his own, and he was interested in that, and he told me like some pointers. So the first thing I've done was to take this online course. It's not an online course, videos on YouTube from Stanford University, taught by Andrei Karpathy.
Okay.
So that's what I've read their lectures, I've watched the videos and went from there, and then took a couple of classes at the university.
Nice.
As well.
So which skills do you think were the most useful skills for you to kind of go and start learning it yourself? And we can at least by the place where you're now, we can judge that you were became very proficient in it. So which skills do you think were the most useful?
I think, the class, I can comment on classes, probably probability theory and linear algebra. Those are some of the most important classes that give you a mathematical background to be prepared for.
What maybe there's something that you can recommend to beginners. So for example, if I want to study machine learning tomorrow, what would you recommend? Where to start?
I think there are a lot of online resources. So first of all, as I said, watch some YouTube courses. MIT, Stanford, University of Chicago, they all put out a lot of courses out on YouTube, Coursera. So I think seeking those and watching those would be great. There are courses for non-technical people as well. Machine learning for business people or something like that, so there are a lot of things to find. Another source is Twitter. I think it's important to follow the people who are famous in the field, who are big names, and you start from them and you kind of grow your network of following from them, right? Because they talk about other people, about their research, and I think that's an amazing source. Also Reddit, machine learning, deep learning channels are amazing.
Cool. So anything, any names in particular on Twitter? We can list them in comments. Yeah.
I'll have to look at my Twitter.
Okay. Check our comments. Cool. That's really, I totally agree with you. That's what I do for other fields when I want to kind of research the field myself. I just start to follow people on Twitter. But apart from courses, any in a particular book or I don't know, would you recommend me to start, for example, first with linear algebra and probabilities and then go for those courses, or how does it work?
Yeah, I think there is an amazing book for deep learning specifically. It's called Deep Learning by Goodfellow. And he goes, in the first few chapters, he goes into just the math topics that you need to know, the probability topics, linear algebra topics that you need to know to go further. And maybe starting with those, that will give you an idea of what's needed, and if you don't understand something there, you can go dig those concepts in some other books or online. But I think strong math background, basic math, but also linear algebra and probability, strong skills in those would help a lot in machine learning.
Nice. I think I also have this question. Do you feel that this field is competitive now, or you still kind of can, if you I would say if you work hard, if you kind of study it even from scratch, you still kind of you still can enter the field. So you're feelings about the field?
I think it's both. I think it's still very competitive, but at the same time, from what I see, there is more to do than there are people. And the more the better, right? If you want to study, if you want to improve what you know, your skills, and get a job in machine learning, I'm sure it's possible. I don't know, I haven't done that myself, but I see people taking courses, you know, maybe even getting another degree, and doing it.
What do you like most about this field, like you personally?
Personally, yeah. Well, maybe I'm biased, but I feel like machine learning can solve a lot of problems, almost any problem that has some patterns, some logic in it, right? And another thing is being surrounded by extremely smart people, and this field also involves a lot of interaction with people. You go to conferences, you brainstorm ideas at conferences with your colleagues, and it's very inspiring.
Nice, nice. Okay, let's talk about more, I would say, like personal, personal background of your kind of moving into a new role, and especially moving into a new country. So was it difficult for you to move to another country? Maybe some highlights, lowlights, and so on.
Okay. So first of all, it's not my first, right? I moved to United States from Belarus, and I was 15, almost 16 at the time of that move, and that move was awful. I didn't want to do it. It was, you can imagine, for a teenager, your friends, what matters at that moment, you know, and you don't really think what US can give you, for example, right? So I survived that, and I think moving here was easier because I've done the move before. And second of all, I really wanted the job that I got here, and you know, it didn't matter. I wanted to be here, and I wanted to work with the people who I'm working with. Okay. So it made it easier, much easier. Though, and I think London is such a city that you can find anything you like here, and if you're uncomfortable in one part of London, you'll be comfortable in another part of London, right? You'll find friends that you're comfortable with, so it's doable.
Maybe a bit about like building your like friends network in a new city. So how did it work for you? Like, did you, I don't know, go to the events or reach out to people? Did you know anyone in London when you moved?
I knew one person. I know only
good start.
One person, yes, and that was it. But I think work gave me a lot of friends, and second of all, friends of friends. You know, people. It's amazing how when people know that you moved to the city, and when they know somebody, they're like, you guys have to meet, and you're both in the same situation, go explore together. And you know, it happened multiple times where people put me in contact with others, and I became friends with friends of friends. Yeah, yes. I wouldn't say that events helped me, but maybe hobbies. For example, I started salsa dancing here, and meeting people through salsa, you know, going social dancing always bring you close to people.
Yeah, that's like 100% agree. But what do you love about London most?
The diversity of the city. Diversity in people, diversity in thinking of people, of the things that you can do. You can go for a walk in this gigantic park, you know, and you feel like you're definitely not in a city, you're in some forest, but at the same time you can go to this fancy restaurant on top of the Shard, and yeah, so that's incredible. And I think also meeting extremely smart people. London has, at least to me, that's what I found about London, it brings very driven, very self-motivated people to the city. And yeah, it's good to be surrounded by those.
Cool. Yeah, I think you also have your path is quite unique in terms of like you moving from the US to Europe. Not a lot of people do that, but it's totally understandable, like for like the level of the team that you were joining. But maybe you could like give, I don't know, short comparison of, I would say, US scene and like London scene in that. I mean, like machine learning and like in general tech scene. Any kind of peculiarities that you cannot find in the US, for example?
That's a good question. I think it's maybe a little difficult for me to comment because I was in US. I didn't really have a job. I just studied and did my PhD there. Yeah, but I think machine learning, both countries have very strong teams and very driven people.
Yeah, so my last question would be, so being in the place where you're now, what would you recommend to people who would like to pursue the same path as you? Like, imagine you would get back, I don't know, 5 years, like 5 years ago. What would you say to yourself, and maybe some recommendations or advice?
Well, study math, study programming. I think that's an important skill. Also, go to events, go to conferences, meet people, and not being afraid of meeting people. That's the important part, because some opportunities might come up just from like a quick talk and sharing of ideas. Yeah, that's probably the main things.
Okay, last question about networking for introverts, right? So for example, I'm not that, I would say, naturally extroverted person. So for me, it's like not an easiest task to come up to somebody and say, hi, I'm Alina, let's chat and let's like, I don't know, work together. But so how would you like, do you have any life hacks for those that are not kind of naturally extroverted?
Yeah, I think sometimes I find myself in situations where it's very difficult for me to go and talk to somebody as well. But the best thing is just to do it, you know, and practice. Like there might be a few times where you will make a fool of yourself, but like what are the chances that the person who you'll talk to remembers it? Probably pretty low, right? So just practicing and putting yourself out there. And that's something that helps me to think about is, you know, when I go talk to somebody who I'm very inspired by, that they're the same person as you. They probably have their own hobbies, they have their own families, worries, things like that. And that kind of brings this person back down to earth.
Okay, so we ran out of battery and memory. So just wanted to say thank you, Natasha, so much for the insightful talk. I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Yeah, and like subscribe to her Instagram, subscribe to this channel, leave your comments, and also leave your questions below. Maybe we'll come back to you and just answer anything on machine learning.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.